So as you may have heard, Microsoft are retiring the A1 Plus license in education, but they're also stopping the free unlimited storage too. In this video, we're going to take a look at what those changes are, how they might impact you, and how you can make better use of your storage. If you like our videos and you want to receive more guides and useful information, then please click the subscribe button now before you watch the video. So what's the difference between A1 Plus and A1? Well, A1 is completely free and it doesn't include the desktop apps. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint. A1 Plus was a cost-effective way of schools to get the desktop apps as well as the other features. Now it's worth noting that A3 and A5 are still available, and if you have those subscriptions, you probably don't need to worry about storage. All A1 Plus licenses are going to move to A1 licenses at your renewal date. To find out what licenses you have, if you go into the admin center, go to billing and licenses, you should be able to see which licenses you have, and you can always use the filter options to filter those down. In this example, I've got A1 licenses for faculty and students. A1 isn't being retired, but there are some storage limitations. So let's take a look at the new A1 storage limitations. So you're going from unlimited storage across all your users and across all your SharePoint sites, pretty much unlimited, to 100 terabytes pooled storage. And what that means is it's shared across a tenant and across services. So what's included? Well, all your SharePoint sites and all your SharePoint storage, all your OneDrives, and all your user mailboxes, shared mailboxes, and group mailboxes. It doesn't include archived mailboxes, public folders, or other mailboxes. In addition to this, for OneDrives, individual OneDrives, that's going to be limited to a maximum 100 gigabytes per OneDrive. And you can make that smaller, but that's a maximum you can make it to on your A1 licenses. Now, buying staff A3 and A5 licenses will increase your pooled storage by either 50 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes, depending which license you go for. So for those licenses, you don't really need to worry, but for the pooled licenses on A1, that's when you might need to take some extra steps to making the most out of your pooled storage. Microsoft have published a timeline for the new storage tools. Some of them are rolling out now, some will be out in October. And currently we've got the view storage consumption, and you should be able to see that now in your tenants. It is rolling out. If you haven't already got it, you should have it by the end of August 2023. You can also view the storage limit. Again, that's not being enforced yet, but you'll be able to see that limit. And then you've got the OneDrive A1 end user management tools, and we'll have a look at some of those shortly. So let's have a look at how we can manage that storage in Office 365. So in the admin center, I'm going to type in storage, and you'll see there's this new storage reports page. On this page, we can see the pooled storage. It doesn't show the limitation yet. Remember, that's coming out in a couple of weeks. But we can see how much storage Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive using on this tenant. And we can break it down by those products. So I can go to OneDrive, and it will show me the top 1,000 accounts in OneDrive, starting by the largest in terms of storage. So if the storage is over 100 gigabytes and I'm deciding to stick with A1 licensing, then I need to tell those people they need to remove documents, otherwise their OneDrive will be read-only. In the Exchange tab, I can see the largest mailboxes, the top 1,000 largest mailboxes, and again I can make some strategic decisions by what I see in this list. And if I go to SharePoint, I can see the largest SharePoint sites, and again make decisions on which ones might need clearing out or limitations imposed on them. So we've got a sneak peek of the storage limitations when they're imposed, and you'll see I can see in this particular instance there's 8 terabytes used out of 100 terabytes. And I can see the distribution between the different products. When it comes to the OneDrive storage, you'll see this Manage Storage button. And when this pops up, you'll be able to limit the storage amount that each user can store inside their own individual OneDrive. And you can do that by using security groups. So your senior leaders, your teachers, you can increase the storage, maybe students, you reduce it. You'll also see on this page that there's also options on here to set mailbox storage quotas and your SharePoint limits. Those options are already there in Office 365, but this interface is just going to bring everything together. So for my OneDrive, I can pick a security group and I can set different allowances for different security groups. So it's worth getting these things in place as soon as they become available in your tenant. Even if you're not near the limits, it'll help you manage that long term. So let's take a look at some other ways that you can manage storage. And to be honest, you should be doing these anyway, because there's lots of benefits to doing things like centralizing resources and setting policies. Because not only are you going to save that pooled storage, avoiding that duplication of data means that you're going to have less work for people, you're going to save them time, you're going to make it easier to use. So let's take a look at the first item on the list, use centralized resources. So typically you might create hundreds or thousands of class teams for every school in the tenant. Now that's great, but actually if teachers are putting resources in each of those individual class teams, it means that they're duplicating data, because they might teach 4 different English classes every single academic year. As a department, we might have lots of teachers teaching the same resources in different classes. So what we do at Cloud Design Box, and what we recommend that you do, either by yourself or by contacting us, is to create some subject level teams where you can store all your subject resources centrally, a bit like those traditional shared drives that you might have had on premise. And in that case, we can link those to the classes so that you store your resources in one place and you just reuse them every single academic year. That means your head of department can keep track of the quality of those resources because they're in a single location, but also you're reducing teacher workload because you're working together to create one version of the truth. And then a level above that might be your department teams, and this might be at school level, but it also might be at MAT and trust level, where you might be sharing best practices. You might be line managing across all the schools within your trust in a department. So line management, CPD, appraisals, they're great inside those staff department teams. So if you create this structure, those classes, they get archived off every single academic year. And that means that when you have these storage limitations, you can decide that maybe every 3 years you delete your old class teams. So once class teams are over 3 years old, they get deleted. Therefore, you've got a nice history, but it's not clogging up, or those historical files aren't clogging up your storage long term. And in our SharePoint intranet, that would look something like this. So I've got my subjects that are shared with all the teachers and students who teach those subjects or are enrolled in those subjects. I've got my own department teams, either at the school level or the MAT level. Then I've got my classes that I teach for this academic year. So the next way to manage your storage and to save space is to set a retention limit for old class teams. So one of the questions we get asked on a regular basis is, I've got all my resources in a class team, or maybe I've set some assignments in a class team in a previous academic year. How do I get to them? And they become archived off, they disappear, but they're still there and they're still taking up storage space. Now we surface those in our class dashboard, so you can go back in time and you can see those archived classes from a previous academic year. However, after doing maybe a 2 or 3 year course, which might be the longest course that you run in your school, you may decide actually after 3 years, those class teams, you have no need to keep them longer than that. So you could set a policy inside school that once class teams get over 3 years old, they get deleted. And you can do that using PowerShell. We've got some examples on that on our blog. And we can help you with that if you're a Cloud Design Box customer. So that's something to bear in mind. You don't have to keep everything forever, but you probably want to keep it longer than just a year. Now, setting retention policies in general is a good idea. And what retention policies can do in Office 365 is automatically delete a document, an email, a file, after a certain amount of time that it's not been edited. So if you think that if you think back to your old shared drives that you might have had in school, where when you did move to the cloud, you found lots of really old documents that hadn't been touched maybe for decades, or at least 5-6 years. And those documents, hopefully you didn't move them across into the cloud, but over time those resources will build up again, and they'll take up a lot of your storage space. So another thing to consider is, can you set some retention policies in the Office 365 Admin Center? And again, we've got some videos on how to do that, but definitely worth looking at. You don't have to set it across every site, but you could decide to set it on certain sites, or you could just exclude some sites from that retention policy. It may also help with your GDPR policies if you delete, for example, emails after a certain amount of time as well. So definitely check out our video on retention policies to see if that's something that could also help you. And the last point, and you should be doing this anyway, is restricting everybody from creating sites and teams. Now, one of the problems you might have is when you first start using Office 365, everything is open and all teachers and students can create teams and SharePoint sites. Now, this means that there might be sites you're not even aware of that contain inappropriate content, or they might contain secure content, but they've not been secured properly. So we definitely recommend removing everyone's ability to create sites and narrowing it down to a very small group of users. Now, as part of the Cloud Design Box solution, we have a tool that lets you create additional teams and SharePoint sites. You can delegate this to individuals within the school that you trust. But one of the benefits of using this tool is if you create, for example, a team site, you can fill in the form, select your team template where it goes on the menu, pick your owners and members, but when you click save, that will create a team with the best practices. So it will create a private team rather than a public team, so you don't get your accidental data breaches. It'll add the web parts to the page. It'll make it attractive. You'll make sure it's all security trimmed and locked down and added into the global menu. And this makes it much easier for you then to manage those teams, because you know that people aren't creating stuff that is going to be public facing in terms of across your tenants. And you know that they're going to be creating them with the right naming convention, so you can manage them later. So you're probably not going to give everyone access to that tool, but it might be some senior leaders in school, some digital champions that you can delegate to as an IT admin. So I hope you found that useful. It is a difficult change where Microsoft remove the unlimited storage and the A1 Plus licenses. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can get around some of those changes and how you can manage it better moving forwards. Please remember to subscribe to our channel. We've got lots of free tips and guides about Office 365, SharePoint and Teams for education and for business. So if you're interested, click the subscribe button and we hope to hear from you soon.